So I am kind of enthused about this here. I'm trying to get lined up here again because in all this internet, bad internet, I kind of lost where I was at here. But um, this is really talking about Jesus being the head of the church. That really gets me enthused.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all ready to jump into that?
Let's go.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to it all day.
Yeah. So we're in the middle of this amazing song about Jesus, right? Colossians 1 there, talking about the preeminence of Christ.
Yep.
And like I've said before, you if you want to get your eyes off yourself and on something that really matters, just read this passage through a few times and look at all the hymns and his and he in there, and look at how few times it says me and I. It's a real it's a I'm trying to think of the word. It's like a reset isn't really the word I'm looking for, but it really helps you to focus on what's important here. So we kind of decided we were gonna camp out on verse 18 tonight, right?
Yep. I think so.
Does that scare you out there a little bit, Frank? You think we might?
No, I'm enthused about it. I really am. That's a
I
verse.
think it was
That's
Frank's
a verse that
idea.
you can
Actually.
camp out on for sure.
Yeah, I think it was Frank's
right.
idea for today.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have any problem filling out an evening on this verse. So to read it here, he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he might come to have first place in everything. So one thing I would really like to do here this evening is dig into what does this mean when it says he is the head of the body of the church. What does that head look like? Like, what does that mean? Because I really think if we answer that question, that is going to make some of these other issues that people deal with around church and what that looks like, it's going to really make it irrelevant. If you really understand who Jesus is, then, and if you can follow logic, which I think pretty all of us can if we want to, right? It just makes a lot of this other discussion kind of irrelevant. But I still want to have a discussion. I think it'll be interesting. So if you go to Ephesians, there's quite a bit in Ephesians around that him being the head. I'm trying to find it real quick here.
Yeah, where's Ephesians at?
It's about halfway through the New Testament. So toward the end of chapter 1, he subjected everything under his feet and appointed him as head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of the one who fills all things in every way. That's a mouthful. Saying Christ is the fullness of all things he's the fullness of the one who fills all things in every way. Just not a lot of room left for somebody else in there, right?
And when it's okay, so in these verses, when it says that he worked in Christ when he raised him from the dead and seated him, it's talking about God working through Christ, right?
Yeah,
That's the context there. Okay.
I think
Just want to make
so.
sure I was thinking right. Yeah, carry on, Kent.
So there's another passage in chapter 4, and I had to work today, and so I was not able to mark all these things out and do as much work as I really wanted to here. Um, man, I really wanted to read this. We'll come back to that. It's when y'all find that passage. I think it's in chapter 4. I know chapter 5 talks too. Chapter 5 is
Oh,
talking
we're in
about husbands
Ephesians.
loving their wives. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's talking about husbands loving your wife as Christ loves the church, and that
Be
he is,
5:22.
yeah. But there's a passage in chapter 4, and I just can't find it right off here.
Was it about being one body by the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace? One body, one Spirit. Just you were called to one hope, one Lord. That's probably not it, is it?
Yeah. I, I'm not
4:4.
sure. I'm trying to remember I'm trying to remember where I was going with that. But anyway, realizing that Jesus, so head can mean multiple things. Head can mean authority over, right? And that's a lot of times the way that we think of it. We think of, if you're the head of a department, that means you're responsible for that department. Head can also mean source. Like if
It's
somebody
like
would
the head
say
of a river.
the head of the Mississippi River, you know what that means. That means
Mhm.
like where
Yeah.
Mississippi River comes from. Um, so also, we understand that your head on your body is where you receive everything through. It's where you receive nourishment. Your body receives nourishment through the head. You hear through the head. You see, like, this is where everything is happening, and you receive whatever your body receives is coming from the head. And realizing that, I think I think when you read these verses and you see where it says Jesus is the head of the church, all of these apply,
Uh-huh.
right? Yeah, like
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
it's in one of the gospels in Matthew maybe where it talks about he's the vine, and that the only way you can be saved is to be attached to that vine, to be receiving nourishment from him. So that's my bit of an introduction. Take off.
You know what has two heads?
A monster.
Yeah, monsters. I think that's the problem when you have, when you
I
have
love it,
two.
Alex. We can depend on you to come up with that. And
Well,
Well,
right
I
I
was
can
on.
tell you
thinking
where
like
that came from. That came from Wade Trimmer, right?
it might
Okay.
have. I don't know.
Anyway,
Anything with
keep
more than
talking,
one
Alex.
head is a monster.
Right.
You've
Yeah, I
got
think I've
my
heard him say
attention.
that. Yeah. Well, just think about like Anyways, maybe that's jumping too far ahead, and let me just
No,
let's
no.
hold that thought for a minute. You ready to go there? Well,
I'm ready to
I
go
mean,
anywhere here.
you think about it on about any given level, right? From any organizational level, there can't be two heads of the household, right? My wife and I, the way that God has ordered the home of biblical marriage is that there's headship in the marriage. The husband's supposed to be the head of the home. And, I think there's so many examples. It doesn't take really anyone long to look at any organization in life. You realize someone's got to kind of be the headship of an
Right.
organization, and you know but I think that's the problem in churches, or in religion, is there's a lot of monsters, a lot of monstrous religious organizations where you got, I mean, you see it all the time, man, where all kind of leaders are trying to usurp one another. You see it in government, right? In the heads of state, heads of government. And so yeah, I think that I don't know, just while he was talking about the head, I just thought of, you know, monsters for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
How that
So
really
So,
doesn't
Paul
fit into a
says,
biblical perspective.
no, that's Paul says somewhere he says, follow me as I follow Christ.
Hmm.
yeah.
to me, that
He was
is the
clear about
perfect
headship.
example of a true leader. He was.
Mhm.
He was acknowledging that, like he's saying, if I'm not following Christ, I would say this is what he's implying is if I'm not following Christ, then I'm probably not a good person to follow. I'm sure he felt like he was, but
Hmm.
follow me as I follow Christ. He placed the head where it needed to be,
Right.
right?
Yes, and also, there is something. I was listening to Alistair Begg today talk about the church. Um, Listened to a couple of his sermons, and one thing he said that really impressed me is he talks about how when people came to listen to him or any other pastor preach, they needed to be they needed to be sensitive to wh- they needed to be sensitive to whether the preacher was preaching the truth. And they needed to ask themselves, is this really what the Bible is saying, or is this preacher trying to jam me up somehow? I think that those were his words, jam me up. And
Hmm.
so he, as a well-known pastor, was telling his people, go to your Bible, read your Bible, look to Christ, make sure that this is all right. And coming from my background, it really caught my ear. I was like, well, would you listen to this? This is pretty cool. Um, he wasn't standing there as an absolute authority that this is the way it is. He was preaching the gospel with confidence. Don't get me wrong. He doesn't hem and haw around. He says it the way it is. But then at the same time, he's like, hey, y'all go check the Bible, make sure this is all right. I love that.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the centurion when he goes to
Mm,
Jesus and he's wanting, was it his son or someone to be healed?
yeah, I think
And
so.
he said, he understood authority. He understood headship. He
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm a man under authority. I tell
Yeah.
people to go, they'll go. But he also understood where he stood in that headship, that he was not, that Christ, yeah, that Jesus had authority over him. And I think too, you see that, was that Paul that was talking about the people in Berea? They were more noble because they went home and searched the scriptures to see.
Yeah.
So I think, man, any pastor that wants to sit there and you know, try to pretend to be the head, that's the monster.
Like what does a leader do that puts him in that position?
I think it can be I think it can actually start in such a inconspicuous, maybe a little bit of an innocent way. It can be a leader that really wants the best for his people and, wants to protect, wants to shepherd well, maybe even, but if he doesn't realize that he's an under shepherd, if he doesn't realize that he has a shepherd, and if he gets that out of place, then I think you know I think it can quickly become something way more than that very quickly. Where listen, we all have that nature inside of us where we want to control things, and so I think it might, even though, like, I find it even in my life with my children, my wife. I mean, I might have the best in mind for my children, but it can quickly turn into they're making me look bad, and so I want to really take this situation in hand and start controlling this, and really start micromanaging and manipulating my family or kids to make them act a certain way. So I don't know. I would say it's a human it's just the sin inside of every one of us, our human nature that we got to fight against. And I think it's when we stop confessing that Jesus is Lord, stop
Yep.
confessing that He's the head of the church. It's when we stop doing those things, man. Satan will tell you a bunch of lies, and it's easy to believe them, man.
Yeah, it's a misunderstanding of who
Yeah.
we are and who God is.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
think that's it, Alex. I think that's kind of
Yep.
the at the basis of it,
Yep.
I believe.
So I don't. I really like what you said there, Alex. That a lot of times it can actually come from. Uh, I was going to say good motives. I mean, we can. We're not trying to hurt people. We
Right.
we probably think that we are actually going to help people. We're not. I don't think many leaders who take this step are actively trying to replace Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a misunderstanding, and I think it's something like Frank said, you getting your eyes off of the importance of Jesus. Um, but I think that it's not just leaders who put themselves in this place. I think there are parishioners that do this.
Mhm.
So yeah, we might need to go down that rabbit hole too. But there's one thing that I wanted to say about this. I found it incredibly frustrating when I was in the process of moving away from the conservative religion or whatever, I don't know how we want to refer to it, but as I was moving away from that, I would have people tell me that, they just want the best for you. Talking about the leaders of the church that were trying to, tell me what I needed to believe, that they just want the best for you. And I don't know if that was true for sure, but it may have been, but it doesn't make the end result is no different. This is how it impressed me. If you have a 4-year-old who wants to do surgery on you, with the best of intentions, he'll kill you.
Mhm.
And it can be with the best of intentions, but he's not a
Mhm.
doctor. He's
Mhm.
not trained. He can't do surgery. I mean, yeah, he can
Mhm.
cut you open good and proper, but the intentions, having good intentions doesn't change the net result of what's happening. And I think we need to remember that.
Mhm. I really think a lot of it goes back to a sovereignty issue,
Mhm.
understanding who's sovereign, and let me explain that a little bit. So if if you believe that Christ is truly head of the church, and there really doesn't need to be a secondary head, he's got it
Mhm.
covered. He's sovereign over it all. Then you're going to defer, you're going to want to defer to him as the head of the church, right? And to the lordship of Christ and to the sovereignty of Christ over his body. Okay. Um, if you do not believe that he is truly sovereign, and you believe that it's up to me and you to make sure that this thing goes the right direction, then all of a sudden we start feeling that urge, that need that we need to come in here and offer a little assistance, a little help to make sure it goes the right way, right? I think
Right.
I think there's a lot of fear in letting go, truly trusting and believing by faith that he's sovereign over his body. Because
Mhm.
um for one thing, it's counter to our flesh.
Yeah.
Without faith, it's impossible to please God. That's what Jesus says. And we all know that unbelief is the big sin, right? That's the greatest sin. So I think that's obviously going to be something that um Satan wants to usurp as quickly as anything, to change your core belief that he needs a little help, hath God said, right? Way back when.
So this is interesting what you're saying, because Kent just a moment ago, he said something about it's not only leaders that fall into this thing that we're talking about. It can be
Hmm.
parishioners as well. And what you said there makes so much sense together with that even as a layperson in the church, you can try to manipulate or control or influence things in the way that you think they should go, rather than deferring to Christ, like you said.
Hmm.
I'd never really thought about it. I usually think about the leadership in these situations, but I think what you said there, Ken, that's interesting.
And the Bible tells us to so 1 Peter 5:5 says to how does it word it? Be subject to the elders.
Yep.
Hmm.
Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have a command there actually. The younger should be subject to the
Yes.
elders. So what does that
Yep.
mean? Um,
Well, exactly. Here's what I wish. I wish one of you would give an overview of what the church is. What is the church and who's in it? And then how does it work? That's what we're talking about here.
so um, as I thought about this today, and I thought about Jesus is the source.
Uh-huh.
He's the authority over. He's where everything comes from. All the nutrition that we get. He also paid the price that we could be saved.
Right.
So it says he gave his life for the church.
Yes.
Okay, who's the church? I mean, it's that simple. It has to be the people who are under that, who receive nutrition from him, who he has died for, who are under his authority. Like, it's that simple, isn't it? Where else are you going to go?
Yeah, I think it is that simple. I need to see if I can find a quote here quickly, um, so I don't misquote this. Okay, here's the quote. Membership in the church is not a matter of external attachment, but of spiritual union. So what that feels like it means to me is that as soon as I gave my heart to Jesus Christ, I became a member of his church. And that's all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then how
And
it
the church
works.
is perfect,
Yeah, exactly. And the reason it's
right?
perfect is because when God looks at me, he sees Jesus. So it can't help but be perfect.
Yeah.
It's got to be perfect. And
So
then, okay,
just the fact, go ahead.
no, you do it because I'm going to take us down yeah, I'm going to get us going down somewhere else maybe.
So just the fact that Jesus has made it clear that the church is perfect
Yep.
completely takes out any possibility that this can be something that we can look at that's defined by any kind of human design.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you get humans involved, you've got screw ups, including me. I mean, yeah,
Even you?
even me, man, a little one.
You want to see a big one? Look at this right here.
So, Kent, is there anywhere in the Bible where Christ asks for our help in keeping the church clean? I mean, I'm sincere. I'm really sincerely asking this because the church that I came from I mean, that was a big thing that you needed to excommunicate people because the church had to be kept pure. Is that biblical? Does he ask for help for what? Break out the wisdom there, elder. You're almost 50.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm your elder. You got to respect me.
That's right. Maybe even obey you.
Oh man, please keep talking. I'm looking here. I mean, I'm going to say no, but I want to be able to back it up here.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, in all seriousness, many of the conservative Anabaptist churches would have scripture that they would use to justify their, what they would call house cleaning or keeping the church pure. And from where I stand and and how I see the church, I don't see that as being something Christ asked us to do. He asked us to separate ourselves from sinners when somebody is, living in sin and unrepentant and whatnot. But
He actually he actually says the opposite, Frank. We talked about this on our chat the other day about the wheat and the tares, right? He said,
yes,
don't go yanking up all the tares because you might destroy some of the wheat. So he
yeah,
said, you're going to have to let them kind of coexist together to some degree.
right,
Okay, now listen, on the subject of house cleaning, I really have no problem with that to some degree if you can separate denomination and church, right? If you want to keep your denomination clean and and
yes.
and you want to do house cleaning inside of that club, your little club, then clean it up. Whatever you want to do.
Well,
I don't have a problem.
this is so interesting you're saying this because I have a friend of mine that I've been talking to quite a bit over the last while, and he's going through some struggles, and he's going to be almost certainly excommunicated from his church, and he sees it just the way you see it. That the church that he's a part of, they believe they're the one true church. Um, and he knows he's going to be excommunicated, and I think it's completely unjust personally. But he says, well, these are the rules that they have. And he
Mhm.
said, what I did was against the rules, and he knew it was against
Mhm.
the rules, but he felt like he was doing what he had to do
Mhm.
in life. And so he said, I know they're going to excommunicate me, and I'm okay with that. And I said, well, I told him exactly this. I said, you're looking at the church as a club. And I said, if you
Mhm.
want to look at the church as a club, then that's fine to think that way. But
Mhm.
the church, the real church, the Church of Jesus Christ, it's not a club
Mhm.
at all. It's either you're in it. Wait a minute, what's the saying? Either you're a saint or you ain't. And either
Right.
you're in it
There you
or
go.
you're not. You're either connected
Mhm.
to the body or you're not. And if you're not, you ain't going to heaven. If you're not part of the church, you're lost. If you are a part of
Mhm.
the church, you're saved. And so it bothers me to hear him talk like that.
Yeah,
If
Anyway,
if
that's interesting.
yeah, I it bothers me if you say that the church and you if you're using it in the context of the church. But listen, I was talking to an old friend of mine who is, I think he's still alive actually. He's a Freemason. And
oh
I
yeah,
was sharing with him, like, this is 10, 12 years ago, about, the doctrine of excommunication in the previous church we all belonged to. And he said, I'm I'm down with that. He said, I'm 100% on board. He said, we do that, in the
the
Freemason world. He said,
Freemasons.
they'll excommunicate you as in the Freemason world. Yeah. The Masons
Really?
will. Yes. And so he said, I actually respect that. I agree with that. And so there's a lot of different places. You get kicked out of clubs for all kind of reasons. So I
Okay.
don't think getting kicked out of a club is like that happens all the time. And I think we have to see it for what it is. It's a lot of your denominations are nothing more than a club. They're not
Oh yeah,
the
that's true.
church. The church, there's maybe people that belong to the church that are part of the club. Their little special, whatever denominational club you may
Right.
be referring to. But
So where the real issue is here is when the club says that we are the church. And if you leave our club, you're going to hell. That's a problem. Because then when you do that, see, this is,
that's the
yeah,
definition of ignorance.
but here's the thing, when you do that, you're doing something to the people that are in that club
Right.
who, yes, thank you, Alex, for the ignorance comment. Uh, sorry, that struck me funny.
I didn't mean
Uh,
to make you lose your train of thought.
You
Keep
lose,
going.
yeah, but when you do, my point is this, okay, so my friend that I was talking about, he doesn't mind being excommunicated from his church because he does not believe their doctrine of the one true visible church. He doesn't believe
Hmm.
that. And so he's like, they can kick me out. I don't mind. It's part, it's their club. I broke the rule. I got to go. Okay, but for me, when I was excommunicated, there was like all of my years, I really believed that. And so when you tell somebody you have to believe the way we believe or you're going to hell, you create a really powerful psychological thing that goes on in their brain when they have to leave because they see the truth of the Bible and they're like, I'm following that, not that. But you have this 45 years of stuff behind you that is messing with you. And it'll take you through hell. And so I have a problem with the people that say it's benign because it's not benign. It's very damaging and harmful. So there you see that side of the well, I was gonna say the church, but it's more like what you said. It's a club, I guess. See what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So what you're basically saying here, Frank, is this is not a small deal. When 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 denominations do this, I like to keep the word church to the actual church if possible.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when denominations do this, you're saying really that's what you're saying is this is huge. This is a big deal.
Absolutely. I don't think it's any small thing to have an incorrect view of what the church is it can be huge.
I think it's a big deal for the person that has to understand the truth of what the church is on a
Hmm.
personal level. You know who I think is the most damaging to? The people that are making the judgment, because what God's word says is that the judgment that you judge with is the
Mm-hmm.
judgment that you will be judged with, right? And
Right.
so that's the scary part is you're right, it's a big deal. I think it's a bigger deal for those that are doing the judging than those that have to understand that that has no power over them, and at some point they'll get set free from that because the
Right.
Spirit's faithful. He'll set you free. Eventually, I think He'll set you free, and you'll have
Yeah.
peace, and you'll know that that you serve one true God. You don't serve a two-headed monster, you know?
Yes. Yes. Oh, and Alex, I really hadn't thought about that much. That of the fact that as you leave that bondage, the Holy Spirit sets you free, and maybe it's very quick for some people. For me,
Mhm.
it took quite a while,
Yeah.
but it happened. But
Mhm.
this thing that you're saying that the people that are making the judgment that they remain in the bondage. That's quite a thought.
You have light here. You have freedom, you have light, you have truth here. You're on that journey as you're leaving it. Guess who's not on that journey? Everyone who chooses not to believe it. They're stuck in that darkness. They're blind to
Hmm.
that. You know what I mean? So they're remaining, their eyes remain closed. They're remaining in darkness. So I think sometimes for myself, when I saw that picture of God was setting me free, and yes, you're right. That journey might feel like hell some days going through that there. But honestly, my heart posture changed when I realized these people aren't making that journey to freedom. They
Yeah.
still believe that. They're caught, they're trapped in that. They're in
Hmm.
darkness. They don't understand the truth. The truth isn't setting them free. They're not believing it. So I do think that um my encouragement is for myself. I'll point this to myself is I need to learn to be empathetic to those that are walking on that path, but
Hmm.
also encourage them like, hey, you're headed this way. You're moving toward the truth. Don't spend a lot of time feeling sorry for yourself as you're making this journey because let your heart become empathetic and missional. Let your heart become missional towards those that remain in darkness.
Yeah.
So,
So you asked a long time ago whether Jesus needed any help in keeping the church clean.
Oh, yes, yes.
Um, so I don't know how I've been trying to decide whether to dig into this or not. Um, because I think this is a passage that people struggle with a lot because the words are there in 1 Corinthians 5. And I know probably each one of us have had to dig through that chapter and try to understand, okay, what does this mean? Because
Hmm.
when you begin to see the church as everyone who's connected to Jesus, then all
Hmm.
of a sudden it takes this chapter and puts it on its head. Like
Hmm.
what, how do I even interpret this anymore? Because this is, I think, I mean, there's a couple other places, but I think First Corinthians 5 is probably the, the most, I don't know, the most critical passage around this that churches use to, for their, to defend why they do what they do. So, and it's just this little short chapter. It's kind of interesting. Um, one little, how many verses? 13 verses in
Yep.
one book in a Bible that there's so much about Jesus and his love for those around him, for his children, how he works with them, how he is the source of all the power. He did the work. He does this. He does that. Then we have this chapter here that means something. It really does. I'm not trying to say that
Uh-huh.
it's a joke. It means something. But I think we can tend to look at this chapter and all of a sudden throw out everything that we know about Jesus and who he is.
Uh-huh.
So for me, it helps to look at this chapter. First of all, understanding who he's talking to, understanding what the church probably looked like back then. And we talked about this earlier in one of the other podcasts that the church back then was more than likely a collection of house churches.
Hmm.
And I don't know how many y'all are involved in small groups. I think both of you are.
Yep.
Um, that's like 20, 25 people. That's an intimate setting, maybe 30, maybe 50. But that's a small group of people who are like you really know each other. This is not a 250 member church where like you can't have a close relationship with 250 people. It really isn't that
Right.
it's not possible. You can have a close relationship with 10 or 15, maybe
Uh-huh.
even 20. I don't know. Depends on how close you want to say. So this is the church that he's talking to, right? The people that are meeting in this person's house. This man is sleeping with his stepmom. The level of like this is a sin that even the Greeks around them condemned. Even the people who weren't followers of Jesus were saying, "You guys are crazy. You know,
Uh-huh.
this is not acceptable." Okay. Um, let me see. There's somewhere here. It talks about your glorying is not good. I'm trying to um anyway, your boasting is not good is the way this Bible says it.
Mhm.
This would give you the idea that not only were they saying this is okay, but they were boasting about that grace is covering this, that
Uh-huh. Yep.
doesn't matter. So we talk about offensive grace. That's the name of our podcast. And it's
It is.
offensive to the flesh, to legalism. Uh, but these guys had taken a whole nother level and they were saying, even this man who's living in this sin, he obviously hadn't repented. He hadn't turned around. He was still doing this.
Uh-huh.
And they were boasting in the fact that this doesn't matter. And Paul's saying, y'all got to quit this. You're, this man is in your intimate group. He's in your 20, 30 member house church. He is going to be a bad influence, especially you're sitting here boasting about it. And for me,
Uh-huh.
understanding the story from that perspective helps me see why Paul is saying what he's saying. I don't think you can use this in a 300 member church to sit here and expel somebody because they don't think the same as you do or because they aren't following your regulations.
Uh-huh. Yep.
You maybe can expel them from your club, like you're saying, but you can't say that this person, well, even in this passage, he's not necessarily saying the guy isn't a child of God. He's not placing that judgment on him, is he? He's
I
saying
don't think it
he's
explicitly
judging that
says that.
action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's judging the
Well,
action, the unrepented action. Go ahead.
I mean, help me understand something here. I mean, this is the thing that doesn't make. Um, I mean, I mean, the title of this does say. Well, actually, it depends on which version, because one of them says something about the church, and then here's one. This says Paul condemns spiritual pride, but he's basically saying remove the evil person from your midst because this guy's a bad influence on you guys. I mean, listen, there's none of us fathers that have children, young daughters in our home would let some sort of sicko in our house and, you know, be in our home. I wouldn't let a molester come and hang out in my house. I mean, there ain't no way. I say, go away. You're not welcome here. You know, the grace of God can reach you where you at, but it ain't gonna be in my home. You know, I've got
Uh-huh.
little children I'm protecting. I want to keep my environment clean. And I think there is something to be said about a clean environment. And I really think that here's the other thing that well, anyways, let me back up. So he doesn't there's nothing in this there's nothing really in here about to me, this is about keeping the health and the wholeness of the body, the people that are his children, keeping them whole and healthy, and not letting them get sick because you're welcoming sickness and disease in your midst. I think that there's um I don't know. I've got my head's spinning in about 10 different directions right now. But one of them is this: the worship gathering, what they were doing in their homes. I think if you look in the biblical context of what church really is, it's a meeting place where it's the gathering of the believers, right? It's not necessarily um it's not necessarily like evangelical as much as it's for building up and nourishing the body, the people that are already connected into the vine. That's what the church gathering's really all about. So if you start letting a whole bunch and here's a problem that I think the American church has fallen into a little bit is these seeker-friendly churches where Sunday mornings have become all about the lost and they're not about the saints. Sunday morning, your church gathering, what he's probably talking about right here in the context of this home setting, in this gathering, is about the context of the saints, the children of God being built up, fed, encouraged, nourished one with another. But if you start letting just random sickos in there, you know, then you've got problems. I think that there's a time and a place to go out and tell others about Jesus Christ. There's a time to go out and evangelize and all that. But I'm not so sure that's the context of the house gathering, the church. That Sunday morning gathering is when we're gonna just like say, hey, you just got out of jail because you was like some child molester or trafficker or whatever. Come to church with me. No, maybe we should take the gospel to them, meet them where they are, and once they find Jesus, then plug them into a church maybe. I'm not saying church isn't a good place to meet Jesus and find Jesus. I'm rambling here, but I just have a hard time with taking that verse and using it like so many people do, where they're going to build a whole doctrine of excommunication off of a situation like that. That's like, that's crazy. What they're talking about, like Ken said, that's crazy stuff that was happening there. You can't really take that one account and build a whole um complex doctrine of excommunication off of that, can you?
Okay, so we're finally starting to get to where I want to go, and it's 7 o'clock. But this is okay. I asked before. I asked that one of y'all would explain what the church is and how it works and all this, because you addressed some things in your rant there, Alex, that to me we need to talk about. Because what is the church supposed to be doing? Because okay, so what you're saying is it's a place to gather to worship. Okay, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a I mean, you don't want you I forget the word politically incorrect word you use, sickos or whatever. You don't want those in there, and I can understand that. And yet, okay, so where I go to church, it's a public, anybody can walk in there off the
Mm-hmm.
street and just be there. I mean, to me, that's not I mean, it's church, lowercase c church, I guess. But here's an interesting thing that happened when you were talking. It reminded me of this. The small group that I went to for a couple of years, we were we were like 50, no, probably 12 people. I think we were about 12 people. And we were sitting around one evening in our small group just getting started, and we were talking about some fairly heavy stuff through a couple of groups there, like not Bible study necessarily, but we had some people in there that were going through some heavy stuff in their lives. Well, this guy that had been coming to church, he kind of just walked in there. He thought that I don't know how he ended up there, but he walked in there to the small group, and
Mm-hmm.
the leader just very nicely told him that it wasn't going to work for him to be part of the small group that night because we didn't know him. There was not. I don't think he was a bad person at all, but we didn't know him, and he didn't fit into the. I mean, we needed the we needed the intimacy that we had built to help one another. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's the church.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, it's also the church to worship with 300 people. And it's also the church when I gather with the youth and we do the youth ministry. And it's also the church in a whole bunch of other settings. And so to me, I find it a little confusing sometimes to get this in my head. I mean, my belief around the church is very, very simple. I believe that once you're born again and connected to Christ, you're connected to the body, that you're a part of the church. That to me is clear. And yet we have this whole other thing going on. And I don't know if it's religion. I don't think it's all religion, but I mean, we have the small group situation that I talked about and the corporate worship, and we have all this other stuff. And how's that all supposed to fit together and work? I guess I would love to spend some time talking about all of that. And I'm not finished. And I would like to spend some time talking about what the authority of the church looks like as opposed to the authority of Christ. Because I think that right there is what gets turned around in these conservative churches that are, well, that just don't really work very well. It's a situation where the authority is transposed, turned around. It's not right. Anyway, I wish we could spend some time on that.
I'm not
Well,
saying the church doesn't have authority, but I'm sorry, I'll make this quick, Kent. I won't make a long rant. I'm not
yeah,
saying
y'all
the
haven't
church
let me
doesn't have
talk
any
for a while
authority.
here.
I know. But just okay, so I'm not saying the church doesn't have any authority, but what I am saying is back to keeping it clean and excommunication in the context of, well, it's up to us to clean up the church. I mean, look, this situation that we read about here in Corinthians is obvious. That's very
Right.
obvious situation. I think you would be irresponsible not to address it somehow. I think the church needs, I think in any situation, right?
Uh-huh.
But here's the problem. If I come to a trusted elder or pastor or leader in the church or my brother, and I open up my heart um about something that I'm struggling with, and all of a sudden it becomes a public church event, and now I'm put out of the church because of something, because we need to keep the church clean. When because here's the thing, like, how many of those situations are hidden that will never, people that will take stuff to their grave. So it can't be that way. It can't be that
Yeah.
it's man's responsibility to clean up the church, because the church is screwed if that's the case. Like, it can't be that way. You know as well as I do. Y'all probably saw just the other day where what's his name? Charles Stanley, is that his name? Just some sort of a scandal, 8 years and unfaithful to his wife, and he's the guy that wrote the book, The Jesus I Never Knew. I
Yeah.
mean, that book was transformational in my life. I mean, it just grieved me deeply when I saw that, you know. But how many guys like him or others, take that junk to their grave, right? So if you're saying it's up to man to clean the church up, that's why I reject that 100%. That is man's responsibility. I'm not saying the church doesn't have any authority. I just don't think that when Jesus comes back for a bride that there will be spots or wrinkles. I'm quite sure that it's going to be, he's coming back for a pure bride, and it won't be with spot or wrinkle. Um, no matter how deeply, or how much sin is hidden inside of organized religion. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I think you're talking about Philip Yancey there, but we
Philip,
got
yeah,
to
yeah,
let Kent
Philip,
talk now.
yeah, Philip, yeah,
Philip
Yancey.
Yancey. Go ahead, Kent. We bring us home here to where we can close this thing down. We're keeping you from your family, I believe.
Oh, well, I'm trying to figure out what you're looking for. Like, you you asked a question about how does this work, and I'm curious what you probably didn't ask that question without having a bit of an idea in your own mind how you think it could.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to do here is, because of the background that I have in the church that I came out of, I find myself looking for a cohesive explanation of the church. I want to say this is the church right here. And I have that in my mind to some degree, that it's all of the people that are Christ's, that belong to Jesus. That's the church. And maybe I just need to completely leave it there. But then we have all this other stuff that we also call church, the corporate worship, the small groups, the mission trips, all these other things that are happening. And we say, I'm a part of this church, and so I'm doing this activity or that activity. And I'm not opposed to any of the activities necessarily, but I'm afraid that many people start seeing all of that as the church, and they completely miss this whole big C church thing that there is that's so awesome and wonderful. And I guess that's where I'm at a little bit. And yet I can't, there's a part of me I would like to dismiss everything that doesn't fit in this little explanation that it's just all God's children. I'd like to get rid of all this other from the picture because it to me, it seems like it can create so much confusion and misunderstanding. I'm not saying to get rid of it like I don't like it. I like my corporate worship. I like my small group. Don't get me wrong. But it seems like there's such a danger in that becoming the focus.
Yeah, it does seem like that
So,
can diminish the big C church, the beauty of the big C church,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
so if you want to talk about bringing it home, going back to our passage here, let me just read back through this. So, starting with Paul's prayer for the Colossians, we are asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will. Whose will? His will. In all wisdom and spiritual understanding, so that you may walk worthy of the Lord. That's how you walk worthy of him, by being filled with his knowledge, not by doing the right things. Okay? Just make
Right.
that really clear. Fully pleasing to him. Here we go again. He's like saying, this is how this happens. You get filled with his knowledge. That's how you please him. And who fills you with knowledge? Christ. I mean, there's just not a lot here for us, right? Like I'm a dead person until Jesus takes me by the hand and lifts me up. All right. Bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience, joyfully giving thanks to the Father. Who are you giving thanks to? Not to yourself, not to your pastor, not ultimately to your pastor. I mean, I think it's good to be thankful for what they bring. Giving thanks to the Father who has enabled you, there you go, to share in the saints' inheritance in the light. He has rescued us from the domain of darkness, transferred us into the kingdom of the Son he loves. In him we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation, for everything was created by him in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible. Keep on going down. He is before all things. By him all things hold together. He is also, here we go. We finally get, he's also the head of the body, the church. Okay, you read that and you realize the part that you play here is you provided the sin that made it necessary. And I think the problem we have is we all want control. We want control over our own lives, which I think we all fail miserably at. And we want to control the people around us and somehow help them to make right decisions and help them do the right things. And we miss the fact that we can't even do that ourselves.
Yeah.
That it's Christ who gives us the power to do anything good. Our righteousness that we do is filthy rags. Like, this is not good stuff. That's our righteousness. I don't know what, he doesn't really mention what our bad deeds are. So I don't see this working out like the 1 Corinthians 5 and some of that kind of stuff. I don't see it working out in anything but a small group. I think Alex did a great job of laying that out. That that is where this kind of thing gets worked out. You can't do this in a 300 member church. You can't do this in a, 10,000 member conference and say that putting them outside this conference does anything. Because like he was saying earlier, how many stories aren't getting told? You're not keeping that conference clean.
Right.
You know what it'll do?
Now,
Oh shit! I can't. I gotta
now
say something. You
one
know
thing,
what it'll do?
what?
Put
Go
three
for it.
guys out of the church. You put three guys out of the conference. They'll start a podcast called Offensive Grace.
That
man.
I couldn't resist that.
that might have been below
I
the
couldn't
belt.
resist that one, man.
So one thing that
I'm sorry.
Brian,
I'm
the
serious though.
pastor at my church, that one thing he said I really, really appreciate. Somebody asked him what authority he has, and
Mhm.
he said, "The only authority I have is the authority that you give me." Um,
Mm.
he said, "We all submit
As this was one of his
right now."
parishioners. One of Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he said,
Okay.
"When I preach, everybody is submitting to me at one level. Like, they're not getting up and talking. They're not
Right.
hollering. They're submitting themselves to listen to what I have to say." He says, "We all submit." He said, Don't get this idea that submission is this terrible thing. We all submit to one another. Y'all
Right.
are submitting to me right
Mhm.
now to listen to what I have to say at some
It's a
level."
struggle, but we
So,
are.
yeah. So the only authority that somebody has over you is the authority that you give them. You like,
Mhm.
for Brian, I respect him because I see his dedication to the word, and I feel like he loves me, and
Mhm.
he wants only the best. And he also admits very much, he's a fallible man. He's not trying to say he's on a pedestal. And so I respect him, and I allow him to speak into my life. And through that,
Yeah.
he has authority to say things, influence my life.
Mhm.
You know, you're not done yet, are you, Kent?
No, that was what I wanted to say.
You're done? I wanted to say something
Yes.
real quick. Um, Brian's a good man, and I'm telling you, what you just outlaid right there was so impactful to me because I don't know if he told me and you that together or he told us both that separately, but I mean, that was so impactful to me when he shared that. But dialing all the way back to the first part of this conversation when we were talking about the authority that not sometimes leaders don't take it upon themselves, but I was thinking about the children of Israel when I'm going through that part in my Bible reading, but when God meets with Moses and the children of Israel, and they're freaking out. They're like, Moses, you go up there and you talk to God, you know, um, because they're scared. I think oftentimes, man, we'll take leaders and we'll put them up on pedestals. I don't know how many leaders honestly jump up on the pedestal. I think most of the time, more than not, it's the people putting leaders up on pedestals. And I think that it really is something that instead of everybody looking to leaders, and sometimes I think leaders get a lot of hate that they don't deserve, when really maybe we should all be looking at ourselves as lay people and asking ourselves, am I putting my pastor or my elders or my leaders up on pedestals, or is God truly there and I view them as under shepherds and servants? And then um but honestly, man, the more that all of us as godly men step into roles of leadership in our homes, in our families, in our churches, the more I think that we learn to honor and respect those, and we realize what kind of a weight and responsibility that those men have, you know, that are leading, that are shepherding. And I think it should humble us and it should make us realize that it's not a light thing. And I don't even know where I'm going with that other than I really don't. I think sometimes leaders get really, really bad, raps for, being up on pedestals when oftentimes we put them up there ourselves. So I agree with that. I think that that is a godly leader who does understand that and will acknowledge that he has no authority other than the authority someone gives him. And also he should be careful that, hey, every sermon that I preach as a pastor, I need to be pointing people to the true source, like we just read about tonight, which is Christ here, the head of the body.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we're bumping an hour here, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been good.
I want to tell
There's
you
a lot we
something,
could
man.
talk about here.
I've
Go
got a
ahead.
question for you three, kind of maybe just think about and close this out with. this is my testimony, and I bet it's you guys as well. And I'd love to hear y'all tell me if this is so. I love the church more than I've ever loved the church. I used to see the church as a small thing. Today, I see the church, like you said, not as something diminished, but as something beautiful, something
Mm-hmm.
that Christ died for and he loves. And, I think that's one thing I keep telling one of my friends who's really consumed with end times stuff right now. And I said, I mean, if Jesus comes back tomorrow, that's fine for his bride, for his church. Um, but I said, man, I want Jesus to receive the full reward for his suffering. I believe that means that as many as can be brought in and saved,
Mm-hmm.
that he has chosen. I believe that really is. I mean, me and you, we're the reward of his sufferings, and it's beautiful.
Yep.
I love the Church of God.
So what's your question?
Has that shifted? I mean, that's my question is, has that shifted in your hearts from seeing the church as this diminished, small organization of, 2,000 people, a little bride, to a big, fat, beautiful, wide bride? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
but
yeah,
yeah, that's
like
my question is, how do
you
you,
you you
like,
hear that you hear that the church in is it in China or in India, in Iraq, like
mhm,
the church is growing like incredible in some of these
mhm,
countries,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
and realizing who the church really is and how God is working. Yeah, I would say it was like I realized I had God in such a tiny, tiny box. And here,
mhm,
man,
Mm-hmm.
he was out working in all kind of other countries and areas, like without my permission. I was like,
mhm,
God's just over here doing this stuff,
You didn't even ask.
Like, no, and when I realized that, God became so much bigger.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good. Well, I think my dinner's probably ready. I'll probably go make my family happy here.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed it, as
But
always.
Me
it's
too.
been,
Yeah,
yeah,
great
it's been
conversation.
really good.
Really enjoyed it. Yeah. You
Okay.
guys
See you
have a good
next
rest
week.
of the week. Yes, sir. See you guys.
All right. Sounds
Yep.
good. See ya.
Offense of grace, how sweet the sound. The blood alone redeems. It frees the slaves and calls them sons. Fulfills the law's demands. Oh, yeah. Offense of grace. How sweet the sound that tore the veil away. It shatters all the old constraints, reveals a brand new day. I once believed I had to earn to keep you satisfied, but grace declared the work was done, the blood alone applied. Offense of grace, how sweet the sound. The blood alone redeems. It frees the slaves and calls them sons. Fulfills the law's demands. Oh, this grace offends. Self-assured, shakes the stronghold's core. Offensive grace, how sweet the sound. The blood alone redeems. It frees the slaves and calls them sons, fulfills the law's demands. Oh, yeah. From those who judge with stones in hand, to sinners brought to feast. Oh, this grace offends self-righteous pride, but sets the captive free. It's grace that breaks religion's chains, forgives the penitent. It lifts the broken from the dust, exalts the